Did you know that repetition is the mother of all learning? Repetition is the mother of all learning. Repetition is the mother of all learning. Hello, it's me again. Thanks for coming back for this final part of our January series. Well, let's recap where we've been these last 2 weeks. Harry Styles, January Blues, Marathons, Darkness, Death, The Stereophonics, Hurry Up and Wait, Shadows, Wendy Darling, Peter Pan, Fundamental Attribution Error, Wallow, Avoid, Distract, or maybe turn and face it and say, Jesus, what's going on? I think that covers it. Makes sense? Great. Well, we ended last week considering that if there were shadows present, then there must be a source of light somewhere. And I'd suggested that the only reason that you'd have no shadow is if there was a complete absence of any light or you were fully transparent. Well, maybe the internet missed out one other possibility, that you are light itself. The Bible claims that God is light and there is no darkness in him. He casts no shadow. That's some statement. Today then, let's look for the light. Now, the cynics among us say that if there's a light at the end of the tunnel, it's probably a train. And as I am one such glass half empty type, I'm going to say it is. And so it's to our last unusual guide I want us to turn, to our dear friend, Thomas the Tank Engine. Now picture Thomas in your head, the little blue engine with the number 1 on his cab, with his 2 faithful coaches behind him. What are they called again? Well done, Annie and Clarabelle. Now don't pretend you didn't just pluck those names seamlessly from your childhood memory bank. But we're going to make this image slightly less serene. Picture Thomas thundering down an incline at high speed, rocking violently from side to side, with a slightly crazed grin on his face, whistling away. At the bottom of the hill is a sharp bend, and he's heading straight for it. Cue the slow motion footage. His wheels shake free from the tracks. The whole engine follows, as do our beloved Annie and Clarabelle. Not Annie and Clarabelle, you cry. And the entire train careers off the tracks. Dust and dirt fly everywhere, and you can't even see what's happened. That classic high-pitched noise hits your eardrums, protecting themselves from the awful crashing and crunching. Then, silence. The clouds finally dissipate, and the aftermath is revealed. A very sorry-looking Thomas, now at one with the nearby embankment and shrubbery, stuck and in need of rescue. I think I'd make a pretty good nursery storyteller, don't you? Well, believe it or not, there is a Thomas the Tank Engine episode where this happens. Admittedly, it's more Thomas excitedly flies down a hill, bounces off the track, and ends up in a nearby field with some friendly cows. But I think my version is, well, better. And the reason that Thomas is doing this is not because he's out of control, but because he's wanting freedom. He's bored of being on the rails that dictate his destination, and he wants to explore these other places. So he goes faster and faster, shouting, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free at last. I'll be off the rails and finally free. But the reality soon dawns that Thomas was far freer when his wheels were on the rails and he was moving in line with how he'd been created to function. Locomotives don't go far in fields. Well, what on earth has this got to do with darkness, light, Mary, Martha, or Jesus, and us then? Well, here we go. We make choices based on our desires to be free. And because of this huge desire for freedom, we generally are pretty anti-rules and things that restrict our choices. But what if true freedom actually involves limitations? Things that stop us doing what we want and restrict what we might otherwise do. What a horrible, outdated thought. But is this not woven into the fabric of our world? A train is only free to travel to its destination if it's fixed to the rails. The pleasure of a sport can only be enjoyed when players abide by the rules of that sport. A stringed instrument can only be played if the strings are fixed tightly between 2 points and stretched out to an exact tension restricted, bound in place. You know, the word science simply means to know something, not to create something. All our science is us trying to discover what's already been in place all along, the laws, the rules of the universe. And as humans, we cannot escape the fact that we all need to live by laws and rules in order to thrive. That's why we have governments and all manner of legal structures in our societies. And when they're working at their best, they should be enabling everyone to flourish fairly. Unfortunately, these laws are created by human beings, just like you, just like me. And so they're stricken with the same brokenness and selfishness that we are all plagued by. So whilst we find lots of good within these structures, we also find all sorts of corruption and selfish behaviour at work. So the big question is, if it's actually good for us to live by rules, by boundaries, by laws, then what are the right ones? And how do we know? Perhaps they would need to be set by someone or something not affected, not infected with the brokenness of our human condition. Someone without darkness, without a shadow, a perfect, loving creator, perhaps. It's better to understand than be understood, said Stephen Covey in his seminal work, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, although he was actually paraphrasing a prayer credited to St. Francis of Assisi. And there are 2 odd statements that Jesus makes in our story that I've been seeking to understand. Maybe you spotted them too. First, when his disciples question his logic in returning to the place where he was nearly stoned to death, Jesus replies by talking about not taking nighttime strolls. Then when Martha shares her grief with Jesus, he talks in riddles about people dying but living. Both feel like Jesus is sort of answering their questions, but also talking on a very different level at the same time. And I wonder if it's like we saw at the start, with darkness being both real and not real. And I wonder if these 2 statements from Jesus are actually linked. In both cases, Jesus answers the questions by reframing them in the knowledge of a future that's still to come. First, Jesus knows people are trying to kill him. He knows he will die, but he's seeing it in the light of a bigger story, life after death, resurrection, the kingdom of heaven. Don't stumble scared in that darkness that this life is all there is, but live and be free in this light that will one day swallow up all darkness. Then secondly, with Martha, Jesus helps her to reframe the death of Lazarus. Yes, he has died, but he will live. Unbeknownst to her, actually back on earth for a little longer, but ultimately, earthly death is not the end, as Jesus will completely turn the tables on this. Don't deny or dismiss the pain and sadness, but know that this isn't the end. There is a hope that goes even beyond the grave. So we acknowledge the dark, and whilst we might have to wait in it, let's explore it, see the shadows and embrace them, but ultimately interpret all of this in the light of where humanity's story is heading. Can I dare to do this in my circumstances? It's so hard to grasp and take this paradigm shift in my understanding of the meaning of life and existence. But if it's true, this changes everything. If you had told me at any point in the first 40 years of my life that I would not only get into running, but run a marathon, I would have told you to lay off the giggle juice. Ask any of my school friends and work colleagues over the years, and you would know that my name and sports were a dichotomy. Yet in 2024, I completed the Manchester Marathon. Is it so hard to believe that what's impossible now might not just be as impossible as it seems? Ask yourself, what seems unthinkable right now? And just maybe it's not with God. My prayer as we close today is that we would consider what the right tracks are to get on for 2026. Seek out the rules and disciplines that will actually bring us greater freedom. Invite the God who is light to turn the lights on so that we can see ourselves and the situations around us in the context of eternity. That we can embrace our current broken reality, but keep the faith that if it's not all right, then it's not the end. So step into the light and shine.